that time of year again when the summer fades away, temperatures start to drop below skin boiling level, and basic bitches across the country rush to their local Starbucks to consume pumpkin spice lattes by the gallon.
PSLs.
PSL.
Yeah.
Gotta get that PSL fixed.
It's also that time of year where you just want to sit back, relax, and have the shit scared out of you by some horror movie classics.
Ooh.
So we decided to put together a comprehensive list of some of the scariest horror movies of all time. These movies are guaranteed to freak you out, unless you're the type of person who just likes to act hard all the time and not let yourself be scared by stuff. It's actually fun to be scared, so don't be that guy.
Yeah. Yes, almost everyone enjoys a good scare now and then, and there's no better time than the weeks leading up to Halloween. So the list we have for you should keep you busy until then.
Also, there's tons of horror movies that are completely ridiculous, but that we love just as much. We're gonna save those for another time because when we were compiling this list, we found a bunch of those type of movies that really fit that. So we're definitely gonna do like a funniest or most ridiculous horror movies thing very soon. So look out for that.
We're sticking to scary for now.
Yeah.
Now remember, this is totally subjective, although I think we did a pretty good job at this one, and of course, we couldn't fit all of our favorites in here, and we probably forgot some stuff. So be sure to leave a comment below the video and let us know what your favorite is and why.
All right, starting out, we have The Exorcist. This one is my all-time favorite for scariest movie ever. It's one of those movies that isn't entirely built on jump scares. It relies on being extremely creepy and unsettling. Even the theme song to this movie is one of the most horrific pieces of music ever. No, it's Tubular Bells, asshole.
Yeah, that song's great. Now, the movie is based on a book inspired by a true story of a case from the 1940s where a young boy had a series of exorcisms performed on him to remove demonic possession, and a bunch of crazy shit happened.
In the movie, an actress played by Ellen Burstyn starts to notice that her daughter Regan, played by Linda Blair, starts acting strange. She's brought in for medical tests, but those don't show any meaningful results. And after the director of her mother's film mysteriously dies after falling from Regan's bedroom window and she assaults a psychiatrist, it's decided that she is possessed by an evil spirit and an exorcism is the only way to heal her.
And what follows is some of the most horrific and memorable scenes in the entire horror genre: the twisting head, spewing vomit, and of course the scene where she violently masturbates with a crucifix.
Classic film.
Feel good family fun.
The movie was so goddamn scary for audiences back then that emergency services were on standby at some theaters to treat moviegoers if they needed care after seeing it. In one case, a man passed out during the movie and broke his jaw on the seat in front of him after witnessing the horrors that unfolded.
And he successfully sued the production company. So good job, America.
I think they probably let that lawsuit go through and paid him off to actually promote that the movie was that scary.
It's great advertising. This movie hurts people. Moving on to Halloween. Since it's October and we're talking about scary movies, 1978's Halloween is basically a no-brainer. There's been a bunch of really mediocre sequels over the years, but the original Michael Myers slasher flick is a classic.
We can't overstate how influential this movie is. Basically every slasher movie since 1978 uses Halloween as a blueprint, for better or worse. You've got the silent, slow-moving, unstoppable masked killer, creepy music, shots from the killer's POV, and a final lone survivor who has to take on the killer alone. It created so many tropes.
Yeah, it's kind of like been played out now, but they did pretty much all of that first in one movie, and it's great. And what's interesting about Halloween is that despite it being such an iconic slasher movie, there really isn't that much blood or violence. The horror is much more about suspense and powerlessness. Like, Michael Myers is basically unstoppable, and the fact that you can't see his face, and you never hear him speak, and that he moves so slowly and deliberately, it's just really creepy.
Yeah. Fun fact though, the mask that he wears is actually just a William Shatner Captain Kirk mask painted white. Ultimate low budget shit right there.
Yeah, they did it.
Next up we have A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street is totally a horror classic, and it's responsible for a lot of our nightmares growing up, obviously.
In Nightmare on Elm Street, the cast of teenagers, including Johnny Depp in his first feature film appearance, are stalked and murdered in their dreams by the infamous child murderer Freddy Krueger, in a numerous amount of particularly gruesome ways, including the now famous scene where Johnny Depp's character is sucked into his bed, and then it causes like gallons upon gallons of blood to erupt out of the hole.
Yeah,
a lot of blood.
According to Wikipedia, Wes Craven was actually inspired by a real-life story about Cambodian refugees who, after fleeing to America, were suffering from disturbing nightmares after which they refused to sleep. Some of the men actually died in their sleep soon after.
Jesus. The film was an instant success and made back its budget of $1.8 million in its opening week, and there's been a million sequels since then. Let's take a trip to space for Event Horizon. Have you ever played Dead Space? It's a pretty freaky game, right? Well, it's hard to deny the comparisons between that game and the 1997 film Event Horizon.
Taking place in the not-too-distant future, a group of astronauts are sent out to investigate the spaceship Event Horizon, which has been unreachable for 7 years. Once they board the ship, they realize that something has gone obviously horribly wrong.
The researchers' ship, the Lewis and Clark, suffers critical damage, forcing all of the crew to then board the Event Horizon, and soon after that, all of them start to experience terrible hallucinations, and they're forced to face all of their fears and regrets. They find a video log which brings to light that the original mission of interdimensional travel was actually successful, but that the dimension it traveled to was pure evil, basically hell, and it cursed the ship, which it now torments its occupants.
Yep. If you get freaked out by isolation or hallucination, this movie will no doubt shock you. It actually only recently started gaining traction as a cult classic. Its initial release was poor and it received pretty terrible reviews and was totally a box office bomb, but many attribute this to the fact that the film was heavily edited before its release because it was apparently too gory and too fucked up in its original state.
Yes, and there's evidence of this. Only low-quality VHS strips of the deleted scenes still exist, but you can find some of them on YouTube, and there's also screenshots floating around on the internet, Imgur, what have you.
Yeah, we looked at them. They are fucked up.
Yeah,
Seriously,
like really disturbing shit in
This
there.
stuff is insane. If it had been left in, there's no telling how incredible the final product would have been. But still, it seems like it's one of those movies that gets better with age, and we highly recommend it for a good scare, even if it doesn't really go with the, Halloween-centric theme.
It's just very dark.
It's super dark.
And then we got Rec, or Record, or
Yeah.
whatever they call it in Spanish. Did any of you check out that movie, Quarantine?
No.
Well, did you know it was inspired by an even better, more horrifying Spanish horror movie called Rec?
Yes. Rec is a real-time first-person horror movie that follows a TV reporter and her cameraman as they tag along with a local fire station for a fictional documentary series. They go along with the firefighters to rescue an old woman trapped in her apartment. From there, it turns into an extremely intense ride as we follow the story as it unfolds in real time, culminating in the apartment complex being surrounded and quarantined, trapping them inside.
Ay caramba. This is one of those modern horror films that's very high up on nearly every list of the scariest horror films that exist, and for good reason. Stay up late, turn out the lights, put this on for an extreme and visceral experience.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. As far as like first-person found footage style films go, this is definitely one of the best.
When it's done right, it's a very effective way to tell a story.
And when it's done poorly, it's garbage.
stupid.
And of course we have the Amityville Horror. All right, so by now everyone knows that there's no real haunting of the house at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, and that Ronnie DeFeo was just a psychopath that killed all of his family members, most likely under the influence of drugs. But that didn't stop the family who moved into the house after the murders to write a book about how the house was haunted by evil spirits which torment the new owners until they finally run for their lives.
That book inspired this movie, and as a horror movie, it's really fucking good. Like, maybe one of the best horror movies ever, especially for the haunted house sort of genre.
Yeah.
It's completely unsettling, and was certainly helped along by its based on a true story tagline when it was released. Everyone certainly wanted to believe it was true, even if just for the length of the film to help perpetuate the scares.
And you know what, dare I say, the remake starring Ryan Reynolds was actually pretty awesome as well, and I found it to be very well done for a remake, so check out both of them. I saw the remake in theaters, and I was very impressed. I
Too
thought it was
spooky
great.
for me.
Pretty spooky by me.
Let's play some video games. Now, we've talked a lot of shit about movie adaptations of video games on this show in the past, for good reason, and it's time we give one of them credit because it's most certainly due in this case.
Yep, the movie version of Silent Hill is actually a pretty damn good horror movie with some ultra intense and gory scenes. Although the plot is pretty confusing, nearly all major critics agreed that it was an incredibly good looking movie. Even like the top critics were like, it looks great. I have no idea what's going on, but it looks great. Yeah.
This is very creepy. In the movie, Rose takes her daughter to Silent Hill, a town that her daughter would call out while sleepwalking. She crashes her car after swerving to miss a little girl in the road, and she gets knocked unconscious. When she wakes up, she finds that her daughter is missing, and she's got to search through the town of Silent Hill to find her.
There's a death scene at the end of this movie that is seriously fucking brutal.
Really messed up.
Yeah. So if you're gonna watch one gaming-related horror movie this season, make it Silent Hill, and not that garbage House of the Dead bullshit.
Or Resident Evil.
I kind of like some of the Resident Evil.
All right.
There, I'll say.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Yep, we're talking about The Shining. The Shining is one of the most revered horror films ever made, despite all the questions it raises and never answers. The story follows a couple and their young son who agree to stay as caretakers at an old remote hotel during the snowed-in winter months.
The father, played by Jack Nicholson in one of his most iconic roles, slowly begins to lose his mind, and the young boy, who is gifted with psychic abilities, senses that the hotel is haunted, and that horrible acts of murder have happened there in the past.
Now, the horror here isn't about jump scares or gore really at all, although there is a little bit of that. Director Stanley Kubrick basically creates an escalating sense of dread and discomfort that culminates with Jack Nicholson completely losing his fucking mind.
Yeah, there's some good like bloody scenes and stuff like that. The doors opening and flooding with blood, and but there's so many shots in this movie that are just so fucking creepy, like the twin girls and
it's Stanley Kubrick, who's like arguably the most talented filmmaker of the 20th century.
Yep.
So everything's just beautiful, the way it's shot and the way it's like scripted.
And
acted.
there's been so much analysis done on this movie that it's like mind-boggling. There's actually documentaries about like the way that the movie was made, like standalone documentaries, not even like a behind-the-scenes thing. So yeah, there's There's a ton of stuff out there on
Quite
it.
the legacy.
Moving on to some modern stuff, we have Sinister, another modern horror movie that I love and actually scared the shit out of me when I saw it in theaters. It was sinister. I saw it and was actually freaked out by it.
Sinister came out back in 2012 and stars Ethan Hawke as a washed-up true crime writer who moves into the home of a family who was murdered in order to inspire his next big novel. While he's there, he finds a box of horrific Super 8 film footage labeled as home movies, but they turn out to basically be snuff films which show families being murdered in a number of ways, like being drowned, being burned alive, being run over by a lawnmower, having their throat slit, and being hanged from a tree in the lawn.
Yeah, the Super 8 footage in this really makes the movie. It's completely unsettling and weird, and I watched some of it on YouTube and was still creeped out by it watching it, even in a room full of people. All those Super 8 films are tied together by this horribly creepy demonic face and figure, which only adds to it. Now I'll say the ending of this movie was kind of lame in my opinion, which sucks because I actually loved it up until that point. Regardless, I thought it was terrifying just based on the creepy old footage alone, and it's full of intensely suspenseful moments, which definitely had me squirming in my seat. So I think it's worth the watch.
Yeah, the first half of the movie is very scary, but it has a problem that I've seen a lot of these modern horror movies where concept is fucking great, but then like the more you sort of get into the world, just kind of like falls apart.
Kind of like The Purge. That's just my opinion.
That's kind of everyone's opinion.
Back to the classics, here's Evil Dead.
Yeah, the visual effects in 1981's Evil Dead haven't exactly aged gracefully, but the movie's so creepy and unsettling that you won't even care. And it's also kind of amazing. They made this movie for like no money, so it's cool to see what they were able to pull off with that.
Yeah, the movie follows a group of college students who go on a weekend getaway to a remote cabin in the woods. They soon discover a haunted book, the Necronomicon, in the basement and accidentally unleash a demonic curse.
Jesus Christ.
I think this one's cursed as well.
Is that human skin?
Yes, it is.
Oh, great.
Yes, confirmed.
Yep, one by one they become possessed by demons and attack each other, and all sorts of spooky, demonic shit happens. There's also a scene where a girl gets raped by a tree, so there's that.
Oddly enough, Evil Dead was followed by 2 sequels that ditched the straight horror vibe of the first film in favor of slapstick horror comedy. They're pretty great,
They are.
But it's still really weird how they worked out. Like, Army of Darkness is one of my favorite
It's
movies
a
of all
joy.
time. Yeah,
it's such a weird movie, and like,
This is my boomstick.
yeah, once we make our list of the more
Ridiculous
horror
ones.
movies, one of those is definitely going to be on there. But it's just very strange how Evil Dead is like really dark and satanic and shit, and then the rest of it is just like a guy with a chainsaw hand running around like killing people in
Medieval times.
It's
So, okay,
nuts.
sure. And then last year, a remake or a reboot or whatever of Evil Dead was released, which takes the basic premise of the original and adds much more realistic and gritty effects. It is one of the most bloody, fucked up modern horror movies I've seen, I think, ever.
Yeah, no, yeah, we saw it in theaters, and I was on the edge of my seat from start to finish. It was just like, holy shit, this movie's insane.
Yeah.
And I think they did a great job remaking it in a way that like doesn't fuck with the first one too much. So
Makes its own fucked up thing instead.
Watch them both and see how horror has evolved.
Another now classic is Alien. Sci-fi and horror go hand in hand in a lot of ways, and while the Alien franchise has mostly been about sci-fi action at this point, the original 1979 Ridley Scott film is terrifying.
A group of blue-collar astronauts in the distant future get a signal from a nearby planet and go and investigate. And there they discover an alien spacecraft with a dead pilot and a bunch of huge eggs. One of the eggs hatches and a small little alien creature attaches itself to a crew member's face, and that's when everything just goes to fucking hell.
From there, you get one of the most iconic horror scenes ever, the chestburster scene, in which a baby alien hatches out of that dude's chest and runs away into the depths of the ship. The alien quickly grows into an acid-blooded, 7-foot-tall killing machine and starts picking off the crew one by one.
The design of the alien came from the mind of artist H.R. Geiger, and his unique and iconic style really makes the alien something that feels just very alien and terrifying. But beyond all the sci-fi elements, this movie is classic horror, with a hideous, unstoppable killer lurking in the shadows of a claustrophobic setting, picking people off one by one.
Don't ever try to take a shortcut. It's gonna fuck you up. This is The Hills Have Eyes. After watching this movie, you'll never want to take a shortcut again. The family in this movie does exactly that and ends up getting terrorized by mutant people living in an old nuclear testing site.
This movie does not fuck around. Right off the bat, there's some of the most insane, brutal deaths I've ever seen, and it makes you realize that no one in this movie is safe. Young people, old people, men, women, children, babies, anyone in this movie might get murdered in a totally fucked up way.
It's got this scene in the movie that I could barely handle. There's a scene in the movie where a young boy has to watch his dad be burned alive on a stake, and it is visceral, it is intense, and when I saw this movie in theaters, people were walking out. It's pretty gnarly.
Intense, and it happens right off the bat.
Yeah.
They just kill off like half the cast.
Yeah. Spoiler.
Sorry. Also, it's a remake, and I'd say
the remake's better than the original.
yeah, definitely.
28 Days Later.
No scary movie list would be complete without at least one zombie movie, and even though it's not technically about zombies, the rage virus infected undead in 28 Days Later are terrifying. Set in London, the movie starts with the main character waking up from a coma in a hospital bed to find out that the world has gone to complete shit since his injury. If that sounds familiar, it's because Robert Kirkman straight up ripped off the movie when he wrote Walking Dead.
The dude walks around the completely abandoned London for a while before finding out that he's not alone. There's actually a bunch of super fast undead people trying to kill him. He joins up with some other survivors, and together they fight to stay alive. But they soon realize that the worst part of the zombie outbreak isn't the zombies themselves. It's the terrible things people do to each other in a situation like that.
Yeah, the movie definitely has like a sort of moral to it, which is cool for a horror movie, I think.
It was a very unique way to look at it. So obviously there's a ton missing from this and we couldn't cover everything. So put your favorite horror movie and why it's your favorite in the comments below, and then go ahead and vote on which one on this list you thought was the best, because we kind of don't really do these in a countdown sort of way. We just kind of throw them all at you. So which one is the scariest movie you've ever seen?
Yeah, and I think this October I'm gonna really get down and watch as many of these old horror movies as I can. There's a lot I haven't seen yet.
Both of us are like watching American Horror Story right now, which is just a TV show, but it's actually really good.
Yeah, I like it.
I've already started a couple. I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre last weekend in a theater. They were replaying it, and it was amazing. I didn't think it fit the bill for scariest movie I've ever seen, but it's a horror classic, so definitely check that one out. That was good. But yeah, we got a long list of stuff to watch this October, and now you do too. So get to it.